If I haven't a chance to meet you, my name's Joe, and joy to be able to share some space with you all. We're in a new series where we're looking at carols. Now, if you don't remember and you didn't contribute, then this is on you all, okay? But we asked first, what are some of your favorite lines from carols? And people shared those. And then we put those on a survey and asked people to vote for your favorite lines from carols. And people voted. And so then we took those and we found four or five carols that stood out, and those are going to be the subject for our Advent series. So today, our carol is In the Bleak Midwinter, which is appropriate because I was in Northwest Ohio yesterday, and it was a bleak early winter. The snow made it so dangerous to drive, and once we got to Central Ohio, we ended up with this lovely mess that's outside. Not you all, beyond the windows, just nasty out. But we're gonna do In the Bleak Midwinter as a carol today. Next week we're gonna look at I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day, then O Holy Night, and then in the fourth Sunday of Advent we're doing the Spontaneous Christmas Pageant. Okay, so super fun. And pancake breakfast with fruit and sausage, and I'll be in the kitchen. So anyone who wants to work in the kitchen with me, I would love for you to join this very fun event that we do in the kitchen. I'm looking at a few of you up in the previous years. Love to have you. And then for Christmas Eve, we'll spend some time reflecting on Silent Night and maybe a little bit of O Little Town of Bethlehem. So we're going to explore each of these, but today we're going to start with In the Bleak Midwinter. And In the Bleak Midwinter was actually originally a poem called A Christmas Carol. It was written by Christina Rossetti. And interestingly enough, there's a whole debate on whether she's the best female poet in Victorian England or whether it was another person, Browning, I think. Does that sound right? Yeah, that sounds, yeah. Don't say it like I should know what I didn't pay attention in school. I'm just kidding. I paid attention in parts of school. Anyways, but she wrote this poem and then later was turned into 2 years later is turned into a hymn. And so I want to spend a little bit of time with this. What I really find interesting is when you look at that first verse of In the Bleak Midwinter, what you find her doing, and this is considered, her poetry is considered just phenomenal, but what she does is she takes the Christmas story. Most of us know the Christmas story. God comes to earth as a child, born amongst humans in poverty. She takes that Christmas story, which takes place in Israel, and she picks it up and she drops it into Victorian England, where it is very cold in the winter. It is not very cold in Israel in the winter. It does get cold. The average temperature in December is in the 50s. It's not necessarily when Jesus was born anyways. It's a sermon for another day. But I was in Israel in the winter, and strangely enough, it was kind of beautiful. It was probably also sad because of climate change. But it was snowing, actually, in Bethlehem when I was there. So it can get cold, but generally speaking, it's not. And so she takes this Christmas story, she picks it up, and she drops it in Victorian England in this first verse where it says, In the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan. Whew. Earth stood hard as iron, water like a stone. Snow had fallen, snow on snow, snow on snow, in the bleak midwinter long ago. She pictures Jesus being born in a world that looks like hers. And part of me wants to criticize this. Part of me wants to say, yeah, this is colonizer theology. We're just going to imagine that Jesus is a little white baby born in England. And so I'm a little critical at first, but then and that's where I was going to go with the sermon originally. I'm like, she shouldn't be doing that. How dare you? As if I should tell a poet how to write. One of England's best, by the way, along with, what's her name? And, but I thought about it more, and I actually don't think it's so bad. because I think it's actually a glimpse of what the incarnation is actually about. And not only that, but it's very traditional. Throughout the history of Christianity, all around the world, there is a tradition of imagining Jesus being born in your neighborhood, often depicted through very international nativity. So I have a few, quite a few actually, probably more than you want to see, but I thought these were interesting. And so I'll show you them. Let's go with the first one. This is it's painted in 1620, so a few days ago. And it was Adoration of Christ, and it's in India. Here's a depiction of the nativity. This is not what it would have looked like, but it's traditional to picture the nativity. Here's one that's even older. This is the oldest one I have in this collection. It's a canteen with the Adoration of the Christ. It was somewhere in Syria or northern Iraq in 1240. There's older nativity scenes, but this one's pretty old. We'll zoom in here so you can see it. You just barely see it there, a little carved into the canteen. You get Jesus there in the center in a cradle. This one's a pretty cool one. We'll go to the next one. This one is Americana, 1886. And you have African-American depiction of the nativity. And you've got Joseph and Mary there in the center, and then you have the three wise men carrying what would have been more folk American ways of bringing gifts, right? So you got the stick across and then two bags hanging. You got three black wise men. This was painted in the early 1900s or late 1800s. Here's another one. It's kind of cool. This one's Native American, done in 1975. Pulling in, this is appropriate for the Native American history. But you have Mary here, and you have the sun, which is the source of all life, connected, falling on Mary, but also connected to the womb where Jesus or the Christ child is there, and then it's resting on the back of Joseph, and there's all this symbolism. If you research this painting, you can read about the artists, why the artist depicted all this. Those four little things represent the four elements or the four seasons, I can't remember, but you can look it up, and it's this beautiful Native American depiction of the Nativity. There's another one, 1948. Chinese Western. You have this picture in a winter cave. Historic painting of the nativity of God moving into the neighborhood. Here's another one in Korea. Kind of get the picture. Coming of the Magi, painted in the 1950s. Here's one in India again, back in 1954, in a simple little home. All of these telling the same story in completely different ways. You get a little bit more modern. Here's 1968 in Britain. Bus stop nativity. That kind of helps us understand the story a little bit, doesn't it? The full painting is there on the right, and then I zoom in on the left. But the Holy Family is sitting in a bus stop in Great Britain. Of course, many of you have seen this one. This one's a more modern United States version of a few immigrants, no place to call home. And she's pregnant, sitting on the back of a donkey. A few more. Here's one from Haiti. It's beautiful. You notice all of them are using that halo to depict the holiness of Madonna, Mary, as well as Jesus. Here's one from Peru. Each one depicting in it their own cultural element, their own style. Tanzania. And finally, indigenous people in Australia. This one was done in 2004, depicting Mary and Joseph as indigenous people in Australia. When we see Jesus painted as African, Asian, Middle Eastern, indigenous, or European, I think at the heart of it, it's a testimony that, and a reminder that every single image up here of a culture, of a person, was created in God's image. And the story of God coming amongst us is really a story about how God comes amongst us wherever we find ourselves. That God moves into our neighborhood. That we are created in God's image, and so to understand God, we need all of the diversity that the world has to offer. And if we try to limit our understanding of God to one particular cultural expression of Christianity, then we really only understand God through that one particular cultural expression of Christianity, and it's so limited and often very dangerous. And that's what I think. The incarnation says this: God meets people everywhere in ways that look and feel familiar to them. And that is good news. Isn't that good news? Have you ever felt like maybe, I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but maybe you felt disconnected from God because you weren't experiencing God like you saw other people experience God? Is it possible that maybe sincerely they are experiencing God that way, but you're going to experience God differently, and that's okay, because that's the incarnation. You just have a different nativity in mind. And you see, I think this is the difference between liberation theology and colonizer theology. Because in liberation theology, people, especially who have been minorities or those who've been oppressed, will imagine Jesus, so to speak, the nativity, as themselves. They'll what if God is black? What if God is woman? And this is part of liberation theology. But colonizer theology will say, well, God is only male and white, similar to what Christy was hinting at earlier. That it's okay if the Native American tradition wants to imagine God as grandfather, as long as we recognize that God isn't only grandfather, also grandmother. Okay, here's the difference between holy imagination, which is what I think at the heart of liberation theology, and unholy insistence. Holy imagination is when you look at these photos and you think to yourself, yeah, that's the incarnation. This is how God shows up amongst us. When a culture paints baby Jesus in its own skin tone or clothing, it's not claiming exclusive ownership over God. It's celebrating that God comes near. It's imagining this. It's expanding our understanding of God. That's liberation theology. Colonizer theology is unholy insistence. So when we look at these photos and we say one of them defines God better than the rest, this is who God is. Colonizers always want to say they have the ultimate truth and they own it. And so instead of allowing those in Africa to imagine God as African, which Jesus would have been closer to the African descent than European, they place a European version of God. If we call the image the incarnation, we affirm God's nearness. In other words, friends, I want you to understand this. And I think this is at the heart of the gospel, and it requires us to experience God with open hands. God is here. Emmanuel means God is with us, that when we gather, we are promised to experience the risen Christ amongst us. God is here. But the good news is that God is also over there, and over there, and anywhere we go. That's at the heart of it. So I want to share this. The sermon is kind of broken into three logical progressions. Here's the first one. If God is truly with us, if the incarnation means that Christ moves into our neighborhood, then the next question is, what kind of hospitality, that's the word, there are my arrows on there by mistake. What kind of hospitality will we offer God? If God is truly with us, what kind of hospitality will we offer God? We see this in the Bleak Midwinter in her poem. If we accept that the incarnation, and if we take the story of God and place it in our neighborhood, that God is choosing to live with us, then we have to ask, if God moved onto my street, what kind of hospitality would I offer? Because here's the thing. Christ comes as vulnerable, not powerful. Christ comes as a child who's dependent, a baby who has to be held, a child who has to be fed, a stranger knocking on a door. And so Rossetti asked this question, what can I give him, poor as I am? And then she imagines herself in the story. She says, if I were a shepherd, I would bring him a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. Yet what I can give him, give my heart. But yet what I can, I give him, give my heart. Yet what I can, I give him, give my heart, my heart. And I think that's a good place to start, to turn our hearts towards God. But I don't think it's enough, because Jesus himself tells us what offering he would prefer. When we think about what does it mean to offer hospitality to Jesus, there's a very simple answer. And that leads us to my next one. If we want to offer hospitality to Christ, we must remember where Christ tells us he can be found. Among the hungry, the stranger, and the hurting. I want you to imagine God coming near, because I want you to feel a certain level of responsibility to invite God in. Has anyone ever visited you? This is so strange for us because people don't visit each other unexpectedly. We have a whole hospitality industry. So if someone comes to town, most likely you've scheduled it ahead of time, or if you haven't, you're booking a hotel. I would guess that most of us have not just shown up to someone's house and said, hey, I'm here. You got a guest room, right? But that's how the ancient world worked. That's what hospitality meant, was you would go to someone's house, and when it says there was no room in the inn, it wasn't talking about a hotel. It was no room in the guest room. Jesus' family shows up, and there was no room in their house, so they had to go into the extra room next to the house, which also was where they kept their animals. And so, they're making use of the home that they had. They didn't turn them away. And you see that throughout the Old Testament, hospitality meant offering space. And so we, this Christmas, have to ask ourselves, how do we offer hospitality to Christ? And Christ says, here's how you do it, Matthew 25. I want to read it for you. It's one of my favorite passages. I've preached on it many times. If you want to follow along, you can. I'm going to read it straight out of the Bible that's in the pews. It's on page 1542. And I want you to sit with this. See, this is the difference between colonizer theology and liberation theology. Colonizer theology, Jesus becomes something that we can use to have power over people. Liberation theology, Jesus becomes something that allows us to love other people. In other words, we begin to see other people as the very representative of Christ. I've heard many people, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it again because it's so important. I've heard many people just feel disconnected from God. They want to experience God. They want to feel like Jesus is, like I say, God is here, but you're not feeling it, and you want to feel it. You want to have that existential experience where you know that you've encountered the living God. And I'm like, it's so easy. Matthew 25 tells us how. You can literally meet God in the flesh. And here's how. I'm going to read it for you. You can follow along. If you're a visual learner, you can follow along on 1542 of the Bible, or I encourage you just to read. Sit with it. Think about this. For this is what Christ wants us to do as we offer hospitality for the coming of Christ. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger. I was an immigrant, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Very serious. For I was hungry and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison and you did not look after me. And they will also answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? How? He will reply, I tell you the truth, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. When I said at the beginning that God has moved into our neighborhood, into your neighborhood, when God has moved into our city, that's the story of the incarnation. That's what we're invited to imagine. It's not a theological statement. It's not a philosophical one. It's not one, and I would disagree with the author, it's not one where we just respond by saying, well, Lord, you have my heart on Sunday mornings from 10 to 11. I worship you. It's not just that. It can't just be that. It can't just be ethereal or abstract or philosophical, because Jesus refuses to let it be that. Jesus says no. And what I love about this, both the righteous and the unrighteous are both confused by this. In other words, this isn't meant to be logical. It's not like if you become holy enough, you'll finally get it. No, they're both confused. Like, when did we ever see you? Like, they weren't doing it because they assumed Jesus was in them. But there's like, when did we ever see you? When did we feed you, or when did we not feed you? They're both confused. And Jesus is like, well, you have to understand that if you know if there is someone who is hungry, or if you know if there's somebody who's in prison, or if you know if there's somebody who doesn't have clothes, or if you know if there's somebody who is sick, if you visit them, if you minister to them, if you give them food, if you make sure they have clothes, then it was like you were doing that to me, because they bear my image. And I identify so closely with those who are suffering that to ignore them is to ignore me. That's the invitation this Christmas, because Jesus has come near in the hearts and the minds and in the lives of those who are most hurting. As our government continues to be governmental and policies continue to fall short of living out the intent of our faith, we decided that we would raise food this year to make sure that a particular population that was going hungry, as SNAP benefits were on the table and questioned and debated and all of this. And so we're partnering with Second Chance Church, that's my wife's church, cards on the table, as well as the Hope Gathering, which is a Wednesday night worship service. Around 200 people come every Wednesday to recommit their lives to sobriety. Many of them are in sober living. Those in sober living are provided a roof over their head. I am grateful for that, but that is it. They eventually will get jobs. That's what they're working towards. You have to understand that addiction can steal people's lives. And many of these people had ended up on the streets, homeless, and deeply addicted to very addictive substances. They went through detox, they went through recovery, and now they're in sober living, and they're getting their lives back. And part of that is making sure they have something to eat, or that they have the basic necessities, which sober living homes don't provide. And so we decided, along with my wife's church, to collect items. And we've started. We should call it Hope Under the Table, because it's up here under the table, or we could maybe change it next week and put it on the table. I don't know. But Sunday, this week, up through Sunday, is really the last chance to bring something. There's 3 ways you can do this. One is if you go to the This Week link, you can find the links. All of this is on the This Week. One, you can make a donation. It will send you to Open Church, and it'll donate to a fund called the Hope Gathering. That money will be used to purchase food. 2, you can use our Amazon wish list. It'll be sent directly to the church. You can also look at the Amazon wish list, order it, have it delivered to your home, and then bring it on Sunday or schedule a time for us to meet at the church, or we'll come pick it up. 3, there's just a shopping list. You can just go use the shopping list. We are obviously, our hope is to have 100 grocery bags. We have a few more in the fellowship hall on this, so there's obviously still very much a need. So I would strongly encourage you to think about how you might contribute to Hope on the Table. We'll be gathering and using the money that's already been donated, because I know a handful of people have already donated. So we'll be using that to purchase additional ones, as well as some money from our church budget. We'll be going shopping this week. We encourage you to bring it on Sunday. On Sunday afternoon, after church and after the hymn sing, it'll be around noon. We're gonna do a sorting party. And so if you're willing to stick around on Sunday afternoon next week and help, we're gonna try to take what we've been given and sort it into bags so we can take that. Then on Wednesday night, which is, I believe, December 10th, anyone with a calendar can confirm that. Thank you. December 10th in the evening. I think it's around 6 or 6:30. All right, but if you reach out, I'll make sure you have the information. We'll be going to the Hope Gathering and setting up in the back, so as people leave, we can distribute bags. So if that'd be fun or meaningful for you as well, you can join us. I have a few people who volunteered already, but we can always use a couple more. It's also just be fun to be at the worship service. The worship service happens in Valley View, which is on the hilltop, just for your reference. And it happens at Glenwood United Methodist Church. So it's a big church in Valley View on the hilltop, not far from here, about 10 minutes from here, west of here. So lots of ways to get involved. I'm going to recap them, and then I'll shut up. 1, you can make a donation to the Hope Gathering. 2, you can use the Amazon wish list. 3, you can use the downloadable shopping list and go to Costco or Sam's Club or Kroger or wherever your favorite place is. You can help us sort next Sunday. You can help us distribute on Wednesday night, the following Wednesday on December 10th. All right? I encourage you, this is a great opportunity to live out the Christmas message of the God who has come near by loving those who are struggling right now as our government does its thing, whatever. Will you pray with me? The band can come up for our closing song. God, we know that you're here and that we can meet you in the hearts and the minds and of those that we encounter, including each other. That you love us. That you are close. Help us to draw close to one another, not just here, but in our city. Help us to lean in towards those who are in need. Help us to lean in to community and the opportunities and needs that presents. Help us to concern ourselves in healthy ways for those who are hurting. Give us opportunities to make a difference and beyond even just Hope on the Table, but in all of our areas of influence and circles as things come across. Invite us to participate in ways that we might welcome you in the hearts and minds of others this Christmas. In your name we pray. Amen.